The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this particular episode of the ForceCenter podcast feed is a deep dive. We're going to dive deep into something we're calling the bravery of Rogue One. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Knapsack, and I am here for this revisit of this movie, but also digging a little bit deeper into what it accomplished and what it did, and it gave me a chance to watch it, which meant I ended up crying on my couch. What a journey. Can't wait to dive in.
I like prepping for podcasts by crying on the couch. A lot of podcast prep has been done at that place and in that way, and that's a great tradition.
Yeah.
But before we get into crying on the couch, we want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This week we are recommending Victory's Price by Alexander Freed, third book in the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. We'll be discussing it on this very show a week from the release of this episode. So to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. Give a listen to Victory's Price and then give a listen to us discussing it. But Ken, we do have another offer.
There is another. Inside Editions, publisher of a ton of great Star Wars books, is offering 35% off across their website with a special ForceCenter code. To get your discount, enter the coupon code FC35 or visit the website with this link, insideeditions.com/discount/FC35. This week, we're recommending the upcoming Inside Editions book, Star Wars Galactic Baking, due on May 4th. So check it out with FC35. We love Inside Editions. We really do. They produce a lot of those books. They're just they represent us as Star Wars fans. Like, yeah, we want the narrative. We want but I also want a book of lightsabers. I want a book of brownies inspired by Star Wars. Like, it's really why we're here for Star Wars fans, a 360 view of this franchise we love. And so we're happy to support Inside Editions as well.
That's right. And you know what? I can't wait until they put out a book called Star Wars Lightsaber Baking, which is just how to bake with an actual lightsaber, because they're real. I'm sure.
Yes.
Do it, Inside Editions. All right. We are going to dive into this topic because there's a lot of fun stuff to discuss. The reason this kind of floated in my mind, we were talking about what we wanted to talk about, and I got to thinking about how, we have in Star Wars fandom, but also just kind of in the general culture of anybody who is a fan of movies or the entertainment world, even from the creative perspective or even from the kind of producing perspective, which franchises are going good and why. This big discussion of the Disney era Lucasfilm era and its level of risk taking, the conversation often skips over Rogue One, and in particular, the choice to slaughter almost all of the characters and then sell action figures of them. So that made me want to take a look back at Rogue One, the big choice of killing the main characters, and how we feel about those characters. Are they going to be Star Wars classics? Are they going to feature in more future storytelling? Obviously, we know Cassian Andor is, but some of the other characters, their futures are up for discussion, which is what we're going to do. So, Ken, here's where I want to start on this. In general, I think Rogue One might be the most liked, least controversial Star Wars films of Disney era Lucasfilm. It's certainly like the film that I feel the safest to mention on social media without worrying about people, responding with vitriol. Opinions are fine. The way you express them, I think we need to be careful with so that we do not lead by our anger. But Rogue One, I feel like if I tweeted about Rogue One, I wouldn't be worried about getting angry responses. I might get opinions, but not angry responses. Do you think that's true? Do you agree with that? And if so, why do you think that is?
Well, let's test it right now. I'm gonna bring up my Twitter now. Yeah, I do think you're right, and I think that's over time, because it's a pretty simple, straightforward movie, and it ties into the classic era. A lot of people love. So you're going to bring in a lot of those type of fans, and then it has the high concept, big set piece kind of action stuff going on that brings in just kind of those kind of casual fans. And I think among my circle of film people, which is sometimes a circle I try to jump out of the plane from, but they generally too say that about this movie. That's my favorite one. That's the best of the era, which again are their valid opinions, and that's what I love about Rogue One. It does pull you all in. I think back to that when it came out. There were some, that's where one of the ones that drives me crazy with the ATSD, and it's just dumb nostalgia, that kind of stuff. That was going around. I hear that less about this movie, which is going to happen again. Time and other projects. Last Jedi comes along and it says, "Hey, we got some stuff for you here to chew on." So just kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think that there is something powerful about Rogue One because it does kind of have something for everyone,
Yep.
If you're wanting to watch a movie with kind of heart and drama and you don't know a lot about Star Wars, we even had that experience one of our viewings that we went with a friend of yours, and their partner didn't really know Star Wars that well and was not at all hung up about Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan, or exactly when in the time period. The person we were there with didn't seem to understand or care about any of that, and was just like, I really related to Jen. I saw what she was going through. So there's something about Rogue One that gets past all of that Star Wars discussion, and it's just a successful story of heart and drama and family and tragedy. If you want a great action thriller war movie, it's got some great action set pieces. It's got, that third act, probably one of the longest sustained, battle scenes in a Star Wars film. And then I think if you want politics that resonate as a larger discussion of politics that you can relate to the real world, don't relate to the real world. It came out in a timely, at a time when people were paying more attention to real world politics, but it does have these very real world political discussions and arguments. So I think there's a power in it that any movie you can watch through different filters, but Rogue One really invites itself to be seen through several different specific filters that would make people go, that's what I want out of a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, and you're right. It came out, of its time, very much so, and sparked a lot of conversations around, like I said, the real world politics, and inspired people in a very real way, and that's part of its legacy too. And I'm glad it did that. I'm glad a Star Wars film did that.
Yeah. I think a couple other things for me, which is less my opinion and more of what I've heard people say, is the fact that it does have a diverse main cast, and for some of the characters, it was the first time that people were getting to see or hear themselves in Star Wars, and I think that is a big part of it. And then the last one for me, for the reason that people might really hold Rogue One up, is it does just, if a big part of Star Wars to you is, does it look and sound cool? The design of Rogue One is just deeply aesthetically pleasing, right? The literally designed stuff from U-Wing, Shore Troopers, my favorite trooper, TIE Strikers, like my favorite variation on a TIE. Those are personal to me, but like Vader's castle, the shot of the firing mechanism being inserted into the Death Star, just there's a ton of just visual and sound, just beauty. Vader's castle, in this film.
Yeah, a big thing for that, and talking about the look, we can dig into it a little bit more if we want, but just like this in Solo, I will say, as much as I love 7, 8, 9, they're shot beautiful, right? I mean, Episode 8, I think you could hang most of that movie on a wall, and it would really make sense. And I love some of the choices in 9 too, but I just love the look of Rogue One and Solo a little bit more. Solo's my favorite shot Star Wars film, and Rogue One's right there with it. And watching it again this week, getting ready for this, like it felt like what I thought new Star Wars would be. Like, oh, we get to tell some more Star Wars stories with modern filmmaking tactics and tech, and Rogue One's probably what I would have dreamed up, on the day in 2012 when we heard more stuff was coming.
Yeah. Like there's just a lot of like, it feels a little bit more handheld, a little bit more cinema verite, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and look, again, we are coming out of the prequel era. Love him, hate him, whatever. George shot those in a certain way, and some of the some of the things are groundbreaking, some of them are maybe of its time. And I think Force Awakens was definitely very real too, even though it had more CGI shots than those movies, right? But Rogue One would have been like, oh yeah, I could feel the dirt on the stormtrooper, like that kind of stuff is all through that movie.
Yeah, yeah, and the grit of it is definitely something I think a lot of people are drawn to, from the story to the visuals, right? I mean, almost every character
Yeah.
is literally kind of beat up and has,
Yeah.
you know, there's very, besides Leia in her classic white gown, there's very few people, who are pristine. It is a gritty film, people going through hard things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think you and I have both had some criticisms of the film over the years. I think particularly you and I are aligned with feeling like there's some different things that we might have wanted out of the second act, but we both ultimately love this movie. Why do you think it is that what does the movie do that so successfully overcomes any of our criticisms or concerns?
Yeah, I think I had that in mind, and knowing some stuff we're going to be discussing today, and watching Rogue One yesterday. And it's funny because I was doing some chores. I was unpacking an iRobot to start cleaning my floor, and I was sending out some Patreon exclusive posters over on my own personal page. And I was like, I should put on Rogue One, and then I ended up just stopping and just watching the film. And this was one of the things in mind. I think, despite some of my personal criticisms of the second act, and to summarize those criticisms, just I wish I had a little bit more time, and I think you moved to some of the big plot points quick. But here's the thing: you and I know from writing things over the years, Joseph, and particularly a movie like this, where a lot of cooks might have gotten in the kitchen at one point. Sometimes you have one line to get across a character's relationship. Sometimes you have one scene to show here's what's at stake, and Rogue One has a lot of that. And despite any of those limitations that might be in the classic big picture Hollywood filmmaking style, it all leads to some really emotional points, and it all leads to a spectacular battle, and it all leads to just real big Star Wars themes. And so I think that's why I never super got held up on it, particularly after a couple more viewings. But just, it all builds so well, for better or worse, it builds to something great.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think for me, when I watch it now, I just enjoy it,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of put the criticisms aside, which I think is a choice you can make. You can watch something as, every time I watch it, I'm going to check that box. And in my personal opinion, I think this should have been. I wish it had been like this, or you can just let it go and
Mm-hmm.
watch it. And sometimes I watch it with a little more critical lens, and sometimes I just go along with the ride. But for me, I think it is amazing that the film holds together as well as it does, with all of the different drafts and what it was reportedly major rewrites, reshoots. Every once in a while, I can kind of feel it pulling in slightly different directions. The main thing
Right.
for me, the second act, I just would have really liked a little bit more bonding
Mm-hmm.
between the characters to build to that moment where they all decide to stand by Jin. Individual relationships are there. Jin and Cassian's conflict is, and their both what separates them and how they come together is really clear and really great. But I would have loved just like a little bit more of the group on a mission together in the second act, to just put them through a little bit of that torture test that bonds people. And
Mm-hmm.
also, like, I think your example of, you got one line to do it, there feels to me sometimes, from a writerly way, of like, there is room in these scenes to go just a little deeper
Yeah.
on Chirrut and Baze and Bodhi
Mm-hmm.
in particular. And as criticisms go on ForceCenter here, often they're the
Mm-hmm.
very light criticism of, this character is great, I wish we could have got a little more of that, this character, a little more
Right.
of
Right.
this idea. And that is the thing that sits with me, of like, we talk about Star Wars as being tip of the iceberg a lot, and I think this is one of those few times where, like, that's not enough of the tip. just
Yeah.
just a little bit more of the iceberg, I think would have gone a long way. And like, for me, the biggest thing is, I delight in the weirdness of the Borg gullet. It's one of the only things in the film that is kind of weird and fantasy like. The rest of it is all in the kind of the grit and the war and the tech side of Star Wars. The more, is realistic, as a giant floating death ball like the Death Star can be, a little bit more on the real side. Borgullet's one of the weird fantasy. a strange squid tentacle creature that can tell your fears and drives you mad, by sucking on your brain. Uh, but it does that to Bodhi. A weird implication to me that maybe Saw does that to himself sometimes for some reason. And then by Borgullet, like I just feel like Borgullet is the Chekhov's gun of Rogue One that doesn't go off.
And you think poor Gullet perished there, right? No.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, just want to share those things because we do try to be clear that we say Force Center is a positive podcast in that when we share criticisms, we just share them and we don't express them in an angry way.
Yep.
So we do have criticisms sometimes, and those are some of mine. But my basic reaction to Rogue One is just utterly loving it, despite those few things. And I think it is because of what I always think of is that the baton of hope becoming something literal, right? That Galen is forced into making this choice, but he creates this thing that's this little bit of hope, this little bit of redemption within building this monstrosity, and he passes it to Bodhi, and Bodhi, gets it to Saw, and then our heroes get it, but then it's ephemeral, it's not real, so they have to go and physically get the plans from Scarif, which are real, concrete, symbol of this hope. And even then we go into this whole baton sequence within the battle that it takes all of our heroes making these desperate links of connect this cable, turn on this switch, climb this tower, hit this button, and then even then it goes to the literal hallway of now the hope is physical, it's real, and Vader, this symbol of darkness, is clutching at this hope, and it ends up where it needs to be at the end. There's something so one way that's like really complicated. In another perspective, it's so simple of just this tiny flicker of hope surviving in this really dark world. And that idea really draws me to Rogue One and gets past any other minor criticisms. And I think the reason that works, because if I just describe to someone, I want to see a film that's about a baton of hope, that would maybe sound like a little cloying and a little saccharine and a little simple. But I think one of the other great powers of Rogue One is it is such a clear depiction of people leading lives that are so oppressed that it's worth risking their lives. That is, of course, the choice. And that is that state in the galaxy, that situation is implied by the original trilogy. It's definitely horrible when the Death Star blows up Alderaan, but the original trilogy is a little bit more focused on individual feelings and, the big galactic stakes. This is down in the dirt. We feel the truth of the Empire's evil.
Yeah, I was how it just kind of syncs up and connects so well to New Hope is New Hope being literally this New Hope, but not just in the story, but for an entire generation of film goers in the 70s and everything there. And for this movie it's not just, hey, here's the backstory. It feels very real, and everything you said about what these characters lose and what they know they're giving up is so big that it makes the joy of A New Hope even that much more vibrant for me.
Yeah, and I think maybe there's something about like we see ourselves in Leia, Luke, Han. We imagine ourselves having their actions, but these characters are really like they're just leading their lives. They're just they aren't the best pilot in the galaxy. They aren't the children of destiny. They're just people.
Yep, no chosen one roaming around this landscape. Well, technically one.
Yes. It's just people who choose to choose themselves. So it was the first of the standalone films. It introduced tons of new characters, but it also has Darth Vader, Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Tarkin, Leia, several cameos, and it does plot-wise serve as a super direct prequel to A New Hope. What is that balance like for you? Ultimately, does it feel like something different, something standalone?
Yes and no. And we've had some Force Center discussions on this, right? On Solo and Rogue One. Do they truly stand alone? And in many ways they do. Do you have to have seen episode 4 to fully appreciate this movie? It's a question I'll never get to answer because there's no way I'm going to see it that way. You mentioned our viewing. even our friend Ryan, the old camera guy at Screen Junkies, if anyone remembers Handsome back in the day, that was who Joseph's talking about, and his partner Daisy. Like, yeah, but she wasn't familiar with Star Wars, but she knew it, right? And so could the movie truly stand alone? I don't know, but this does feel like something different. It does feel the most adult Star Wars maybe we've gotten so far. Maybe some moments of Mando, you could factor into that conversation too. But so to reiterate what I was talking about earlier, just like that, you mentioned grit and the dirt and the grime, and this is a little of it's the dirtier parts of Star Wars flowing nicely into New Hope in a very different way that doesn't distract from New Hope. It doesn't destroy much for me in New Hope, and it only adds to it. But now, just again, it makes it feel more vibrant. But it feels like its own thing that it's very much in this universe for me.
Yeah, I think there is something for me. You brought up that great point that coming right off of Force Awakens, there was, and sometimes still is that criticism of, oh, we got to see Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan. We
Mhm.
got to see all these known characters. We can't get far away from the Skywalker saga. That those criticisms are there from fans who really, really want something totally standalone, totally different. But I think for me, the reason that lands so strong is because despite all these connections to what has been, it all of it is from this new perspective, right? The
Mhm.
fact that it is, yeah, it's the rebels fighting the Empire, but it's Rogue One is it's kind of, it's not literally the pilots, but it is, you go to that briefing scene in New Hope, it's like it's all these people. It's
Yeah.
their story, it's grittier, it's more desperate. There is less of the fantastic, uh just in terms of like there are fewer creatures, there aren't as much weird tech. It's, I mean, the actual tech that gets it to that gets the plans up to the ships is like, it's like a cable guy came out, right?
Yeah.
It's
Literally. Yeah.
restore the Wi-Fi. It's the Star Wars version of restore the Wi-Fi. It's not wampas, it's not
Yeah.
monsters in ice caves and being frozen in carbonite. It's not murder bears lurking in ancient forests. It
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't have anywhere near as much of that fantastic, and I think that aesthetic is what really makes it feel extremely different, and that aesthetic ties to the fact that it is it's a really different story. It's a heist, it's a war, it's a political thriller, it's a found family drama. It's all things that you could see in other parts of Star Wars, but it
Yeah.
is really pulling out those details and celebrating them and giving them a different tone.
Yeah, look, I still think anything Star Wars has to feel, look, sound, and kind of be connected to some part of the center of the Star Wars galaxy and story. I am a big fan of Thai food. I've never walked into a Thai restaurant and been like, "Hey, let me see your pizzas." Like, I just don't. I don't. Sometimes I get the nostalgia pull, and you can use it incorrectly, or you can use it better than other places. I totally get that conversation, but I love that we get to see these characters. Like, love we get to examine a little bit behind the power struggle over the Death Star itself, and all these things that I know and love, and that we get to kind of revisit them in a new way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's it, is revisit some things we know in a new way. It is seeing the politics, the petty politics behind the Death Star. Seeing, sometimes we kind of poke fun at the Mustafar Castle scene for being a half absolute horror show and half business meeting. But we do
Yeah,
get that really interesting political thing of the Empire has not wiped the Senate away yet. And so they still have to come up with cover stories of it as a mining accident, to keep the Death Star secret until the right moment. So it is new approaches. Even Vader, right? Vader could easily
Mhm.
be one of those targets for like Star Wars is not willing to try anything new. One of the most famous icons of Star Wars is all over this, but we get to see his weird castle. He does have a business meeting, and then he has the unleashed hallway scene. We are seeing Vader in ways that we haven't seen him before for the most part.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, great way to look at it there. Absolutely, and he gets to make some good jokes, just like Anakin did in the Clone Wars. So it's great.
Yeah, that is a conversation that we've had before, and I shall not re-engage on the Vader pun today. I'm glad that people enjoy it. Last thing for me about why it does feel different, even though it has these moments of huge connection to the Skywalker saga. I think all the themes are. and ideas can be connected to many points in Star Wars, but because it's a really different story with a different focus and a different structure, I don't think there's as many moments of direct Star Wars poetry. Um,
Mhm.
like I feel like that the direct Star Wars poetry, people have made fun of the Lucas quote, but the Skywalker saga, those 9 films, that is to me a part of their journey
Yeah.
on is a choice. It's not an accident that there are moments between Rey, Anakin, and Luke that rhyme, or moments between Kylo and Han that rhyme. You know, and there are some fans who don't like that, who that seeing that more direct Star Wars poetry, those rhyming lines, I think are what contribute to that feeling like it's not doing enough new things. And then Rogue
Yeah.
One, I think, really offers like there are those thematic connections, but not direct moments of rhyming.
Yeah. 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 Sorry, my mind went to another spot. Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's right. And again, this goes to just breaking down simple things. Of It's why no lightsaber hero, no, the fate of the galaxy is dealt with in a much more real way, and so it's a little stanza in the poem, but on the outside, in the margin.
Yeah, yeah, a little
It's the middle. If one thing in terms of a song, it's a good middle eight.
yeah, a little interstitial. Yeah, great,
Mhm.
great. Um, so several years on, how
Yeah.
does the big choice to kill the main characters sit with you? Do you still like it? Does it give the film its power?
I think it does. I mentioned up top. I'm not lying. I had a lot of tears in my eyes yesterday watching this film, and in a great way. And this is why sometimes I can admit to being a little over the years, and this podcast or other shows I've been a part of, and being one of those quote positive Star Wars people, and generally everyone really appreciates that and gets what we do here at Star Wars. But I sometimes get real defensive when it's used against me. Sometimes in personal conversations with people I used to work with. Um, it's real, and I've lived this story. I've lived this thing, and Rogue One now represents to me like literally 40 plus years of cheering on the rebels against the Empire, and learning a little bit more of what that cost truly is and where it came from. And so I'll start here, Joseph. Excuse me. Sorry if I'm going a little out of left field to
Hmm.
go back onto your question
Go
here.
go wherever you want. Take a
Yeah,
long journey.
yeah. Well, so I highlighted on a Spotlight Star Wars a couple years ago the Return of the Jedi novelization written by James Caan, not that one, the other one. And Mon Mothma. The description of Mon Mothma in 1983 could easily be used as a treatment for Star Wars Rebels and for a part of the treatment for Rogue One. It's all there, and it comes from George's mind and put down into novelization form about who Mon Mothma was, but also what the rebellion was and how they needed her and they needed a leader, and the idea of let's rebel, a great concept that we just accepted in 77 and moved on with, right? We overlooked it. And again, this is in the book in 1983. It's there that it's like the infighting, the different thoughts on how to do it and how you have to come together and what that really means. And you always say, Noah Jabel, rebellion's dead. There's nothing we can do. It's a great scene. But so to take that all into this movie and to finally show me, I'm talking about little Kenny, to that the victory in Return of the Jedi was so earned on so many levels. This is why I talk about the sigh of Akbar in Return of the Jedi during that battle when they take out the Super Star Destroyer. Of just like, we didn't just do it today; we've done it for the last 20 years, and this was we were so close to not being at this point, and we still got to finish the job. And this movie represents that. And I was thinking specifically about the power of taking the main characters and killing them off one by one. Seems like, yeah, by the time K2SO dies, the moment it happens, I remember a lot of us in the theater were like, oh, wow, they might do this, right? Well,
Hmm.
I guess the droid might be, that's the easy one to kill off. Everyone else can go off into the sunset. But no, it builds and builds and builds. I was so moved by the beginning, the opening with little Jyn Erso, and Saw Gerrera comes in and says, "Hey, come, the journey, journey's long, whatever the line is." And we know Saw, but you see him in that moment, and his hair isn't crazy, his voice is still his voice, but he's not broken, he's not breathing. And then when you see him later on, to me, for we know as a fans what he's lost, what he's given up. But you just see in that moment this broken man in pieces, and he's still trying to fight. And you already know by Mon Mothma giving that sideways glance to Draven and everyone, like, yeah, Saw Gerrera's it's caused some problems for us. And it all comes down. And so you see, Saw to me represents literally the giving up of yourself for this goal, and all that you've lost, and how you are broken and you're ripped into pieces. It is what Cassian Andor's thinking when he shoots Tivik. It is what Jyn Erso maybe hesitates to join. It's all those things, and K2SO being choice over programming, all those kind of things, and it all flows into, this is Admiral Raddus of the Rebel Alliance, and why coming at a light speed and the Rebel Alliance going, we're here and we're going to fight, makes me cry. And it makes me just chills, because it's 40 years of my fandom going, this is the stuff I acted out on the playground was built on all these debates and these arguments and these infightings and these secret whispers of go kill Ursa, why you're actually being sent to, your missions to save him, or it's all there. And to see it, each character represents something that they're giving up. I love the Bodhi Rook one, because he's just a workaday man trying to make it right. And talk about the second actor, you talked about, I wish a scene had one or two more beats sometimes. The Bodhi Rook one, where he says, and Riz Ahmed plays, I love that he kind of makes him this high anxiety, kind of stumble, he's just kind of, he's that nervous energy he has. And how he's just kind of says, Galen said, I can make things right. And how that's driving him. And when he does make it right, he's calm. He's not, there's a little bit of the stutter step and his voice is gone. And that's his final moment. And he doesn't get to go home to his family. He made it right on a bigger level, on a bigger scale, and it cost him. And this movie represents that piece by piece by piece. And that's what moves me now. And that's why I think it's powerful.
Yeah, I think that everything you're saying, it reminds me of this idea that in A New Hope, this is what Leia knows. This is the truth of the rebellion that Leia's carrying, that Luke just kind of knows as an idea far away that he's not a part of yet, and that Han is trying his best, like many of the characters in Rogue One initially, to just look away from it, not his problem.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how bad the Empire is. He's known since he was a child,
Right.
but it's not his problem. And the fact that this takes us takes that away from just being ideas to being huge truths experienced by really relatable characters that we get to know. And even if like Kovachev, I'd like to know him better, we do get it, and that's why the film works so much. And seeing, I think, to me, the reason the deaths are so effective and matter so much is not just the, like, okay, well, we don't want to explain why they weren't around during A New Hope. It's that idea that this is something worth sacrificing for, because the alternative is utter galactic oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And who would I be if I looked away from that? And I think that runs through almost all the characters' stories of on what level do they accept that, when do they accept that, why do they accept that. There's personal reasons that they're making their choices, but it's also just the picture of, this is the truth of the galaxy. This is how awful the Empire is, and it's not a debate. It's not a thing that you need to do a listicle of all of their bad actions.
Mm.
They've built a giant gun to point at the galaxy, and if you don't do exactly what they say, they are going to eradicate you. And the fact that we get to see, on one hand, I go on about Noah Jabel and I make jokes about him, but it's just so powerful to have a real person like him who is upset enough with the Empire, who says, sure, I will help build this alliance. And then when it really comes to pulling the trigger and doing something, he can't allow himself to believe that something as awful as the Death Star is real. I believe his line is, Death Star, this is nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to the heart of that really real human thing, when you get confirmation that something truly, truly awful, horrific is going on, that we all have that temptation to be a Noah Jabal and go, it's not that bad. It can't be that, and the counter argument that's made by our heroes is, if we don't do, it is that bad. I don't want to deal with it. To a one, they don't want to, but it's true. And if they don't deal with it now, it will haunt them forever. In both as people and also just as this is the time to make a difference because we won't be able to make a difference later. We're really at that tipping point. Um, and it's great as a Star Wars story. It's a great if you want to apply it to any real world history. It's great if you want to apply it just to our own journeys as people. Of
Mhm.
looking at choices you're making in your life, and you don't want to admit that you are making choices that are that bad, and you want to say that's nonsense. I don't have that problem. And then these heroes who go, no, it's awful, but we have to look it right in the face, and we have to deal with it now.
Yeah. Noah Jabal.
Nowhere
But
Jabel. Don't be a
I
nowhere Jabel.
yeah, no, but I love that. I love that sequence, and I remember, you know, and look, Rogue One benefits a lot from the supplemental material, and
Yes.
that could that's sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. But I choose to celebrate it now because guess what? I don't have to say, well, I didn't read the book because I read all the Star Wars books. So guess what? I'm going to allow myself to reap that little benefit. Catalyst and everything. That opening sequence has so much more weight if you do know their history. But I think it's there. It's there, and you just you go with what's on screen, but yeah, everything that scene where they're arguing and fighting, and we know in the books it goes for 2 hours. In movies, you get 2 minutes because that's how movies are made, how you tell the stories. It just really adds. Just I love the idea that I never would have grown up, despite that Mon Mothma paragraph in that novel. I never grew up thinking that the rebels didn't get along with each other, or that the rebels came from different points. I just thought it's Team A and Team B, and they're going to fight for the championship of the galaxy. And it's to see it all play out, I appreciate it more and more. The debate and all the lines that you and I, yeah, what does she propose it? And so you've told us all these little quotable quotes that are funny in their own way. They all add up to just a real powerful sequence.
I say we fight.
Ah, the
Slap
best,
the flapper. Slap
the
the flipper
best.
down. Yeah, yeah. And I think for me to go on a journey back to the central question, which I'm really glad that we went on this journey, is that all of that has so much more power if in this particular circumstance they truly die, right? Because
Yeah.
we know from A New Hope. Yeah, I love looking at New Hope as especially it came out and everybody's like, in contrast to all these gritty, depressing films, this is just a fun loving adventure. And it is because tone matters in films, and we don't linger on the fact of how much horrific death there is. Like, it's a
Right.
fun loving film where the main character decides to leave his home because his adoptive parents have been burned to their bones. It's a fun lark where a princess can really take care of herself, and she has to since her whole planet was destroyed. There is violence and death in the absolute fun,
Mm,
simple, good versus evil romp that A New Hope is. And I think it's just such a great way to pay tribute to A New Hope, saying that's not the goal of A New Hope to focus on the truth, on the death and the war. But this is an opportunity to focus on those moments and to celebrate those characters. And I think that is more powerful if we get to meet these really compelling, very real characters um, who don't have, who aren't going to live on to be in the next sequel. Who
mm.
are truly going to give their lives.
Yeah, no, and I think just coming out of Force Awakens, which was a modern fairy tale retold and all that kind of stuff, and did its job so well. Rogue One to me helps set up a little bit for what the modern era is all about too. If we get to also examine the little details of this whole story, and that's where some of the power comes from with them going the true sacrifice.
Yeah, and I think it also just goes to Star Wars can be lots of things, and it can be a fairy tale. And if you don't enjoy the sequel trilogy, you can say the Skywalker saga ends in Return of the Jedi, and they went through some hard times, but then they lived happily ever after, and it's a little bit more of a fairy tale. And a lot of more modern Star Wars storytelling is like, yeah, no, I mean there are space wizards and laser swords, but the stakes are real for real people, and I think the sequel trilogy is very much about just because you succeeded once doesn't mean you're not going to have problems in your, when you're middle aged, and Rogue One, I think, really dives into that,
Mhm.
being a little bit less fairy tale and a little bit more real galaxy.
Yeah.
So, why do you think that the bold choice of letting all of the main characters perish gets glazed over And also, feel free to question me if you don't think that's an accurate,
Oh,
discussion point. Feel free to
yeah.
challenge me on that.
No, well, no, I don't think I need a fully judge, but I'm trying to think of conversations I've had. I think I think I'm surrounded by some folks who enjoy that, and I'm not talking about Star Wars podcasts or something. I'm talking about people, film fans that I know, work with, who like that choice. But I don't think the true power of it is fully celebrated all the time. Um, if that makes sense. So I don't know. So yeah, I guess my question to you is: have you? In what ways do you think it's been glazed over?
I think maybe I'm just internalizing the number of conversations I have with people in person who are kind of grumbly about Disney era Lucasfilm and say like, oh, it's just because they're not brave, they're not willing to take any risks, or even like, oh,
Right.
Mandalorian season 1 was, really different. It was finally a small story, but then we had to connect back to Luke Skywalker and Star Wars. Just they're just full of terror, and they will never go away from the big characters of the main stories.
Right.
And I feel like the fact that every main character died in a Disney movie,
Mm-hmm.
you can't say the S word on Disney Plus, but you can slaughter the main characters
Right. Right.
of a Star Wars movie and then sell action figures. I feel like if you have a really strong feelings about um, Star Wars not being willing to take risks, then in conversations I've had, then this gets glazed over because to me it's
Yeah.
a pretty big example that there is a willingness to take risks.
I totally agree with you in that regard. Yeah. No. Then thank you for the clarification. Yeah. I think yeah, Star Wars they can't leave the Skywalkers, or they're never brave to try. Those are critic buzzwords. I literally take off the screen, off the Twitter machine, toss them, and throw them out the window. It, to me, it just means you haven't really paid attention. I mean, I'm being a bit of a jerky jerk there, so I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I think that's it for me. And I think this is, definitely just a place where I'm expressing an opinion. And if anybody listening disagrees, as always, I have the utmost respect for that. But I just think I feel strongly that Star Wars has always been something that is both a creative big swing and it's a large corporation that even when it's Lucas, I mean, Lucas made his own documentary called The Empire of Dreams, where he sort of ironically reflects on the fact that I didn't want to do anything from the studio system. And in order to not do that, I built my own studio and I became the monster I was trying to destroy, and almost relates himself to Vader. Like
Mm-hmm.
Lucas made that about himself,
Yeah.
So I feel like there's always going to be this tension in Star Wars that it generated in Lucas's mind as an indie film. The prequels have been described as like the most expensive indie films ever made because Lucas made the films he wanted to make, period.
Yeah.
And I feel that even though there's always this tension between the creative versus the bottom line is to make money, that even in this Disney era of Lucasfilm, there is a real commitment to taking big swings. And I think, killing all of the main characters is a prime example of that. You love A New Hope because it is a whiz bang adventure, simple black and white story, at least in that first film, before you know all the twists and turns, before you know Vader's Luke's father. You got interviews back in the day with Alec Guinness saying, I beg people not to overthink this or discuss it. It's a simple story of good and bad for a new generation. Um, so for them to take that vision of A New Hope and go, no, we want to fill in the gray.
Mhm.
It's a big creative swing, and I think there are swings like that in all the Star Wars storytelling, in my opinion. So I think I cling to this one as an example of if you're of the opinion that there aren't risks, I feel like that this should be a part of the conversation because I think it is a risk to kill everyone and then sell action figures.
Yeah. Yeah. Over 1.5 billion, right? In a movie where everyone dies.
Exactly. Well, thank you for letting me work through my opinions.
No, I love it. No, I love it. And the only other from what I was hinting at is even the friends of mine who love this film, who aren't in that daily, weekly Star Wars conversation like we are. I think they don't even. I don't need them to because they enjoy the film, but it's like they're focused on the boom, bam, walkers, X-wings, and as you should, because it's spectacular in this movie. But the cost of the movie, the victory's price, which is now also the book and alphabet squadron, is not felt as much, and sometimes maybe I want to point that out to them.
Yeah. That's a great way to sum up this part of our conversation. There is a price for victory in Rogue One, and it's one of the things that gives it its power. So with that, we are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back to discuss those characters who sacrifice so much in Rogue One. We'll be right back.
Hey, ForceCenter friends, make sure you're keeping up to date on all the great content from Jennifer Landa. Whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok, you whippersnappers, ForceCenter's own Jennifer Landa continues to bring you fun, informative, and insightful laughs and moments.
Also, Jennifer brings her experience and perspective as a Star Wars-loving mother to her DIY projects, blogs, and more, so be sure to head on over to JennyLanda.com, that's JENILANDA.com, for articles like how to make your own Darth Maul sneakers or 10 unique Star Wars baby gift ideas.
Follow Jen on Twitter and Instagram at Jennifer Landa, and on TikTok as Jennifer Landa 1138.
And we are back to continue discussing the bravery of Rogue One, the loaded title that reflects my opinion about this discussion. But we want to look at some of these characters, discuss a little bit about what we love about them, what future storytelling we might want to see, because I don't think Rogue One would have worked as well if we didn't like these characters. So let's start with Jyn Erso. Ken, how are you feeling about this character several years on? Is she an all-time great? What does she add to the Star Wars saga? What are your feelings?
I think she's starting to grow as an all-time great in a lot of people's eyes, and I've always enjoyed this character. I think Felicity Jones did a really good job. And is she a little dour and quiet and muted at times? I've heard that critique of not her performance, but just how the character is sometimes presented. Yeah, I can see that, and particularly maybe that's some of the Second Act stuff for me, but overall, and the stuff with Saw on Jeddah and the holo video of her father and the tear, man, it's one of my favorite Star Wars moments, and it's one of the best acted moments. So because of all that, and then because of the supplemental material, you and I just praised to the high heavens Rebel Rising by Beth Revis, which is just a wonderful story about Jyn a few years younger and stuff that she's gone through. So I think the legacy of the character is there. It's felt by other characters. Chas in Alphabet Squadron, right?
Mm-hmm.
Calling herself Maya Halleck, based off of Leanna Halleck, the name Jyn is under when the movie begins. So I think it's there. And as far as what she adds is a lot of things. It is family issues and lost family, but also perspectives and how points of view and not seeing the whole story can maybe send you down a path. How your mentors and how you're raised and what you feel and just letting your heart harden to the point where you don't care. And maybe that's not who you are as a person. Jyn says, it doesn't affect you if you don't, look up. But I got to imagine that many times in her life, she looked up and just was like, I better look back down because I just can't deal with what's up there. And I think that's very real and something we all deal with. And then she does it all. And the about face she does, as opposed to Cassian Andor has been living this life. But the about face is something I think a lot of people go through. And so it's inspirational from that regard.
Yeah, totally agree about the performance. I think her performance has really grown on me over the years. I think I always thought she was great. I always thought she was like engaging and you wanted to know more. And I think there are some moments where I feel like, it is clear that she is feeling a lot, but is the script helping us understand what emotion she's feeling? And the more I watch the films, the more that goes away.
Yeah.
She's one of my the absolute favorite performances, favorite characters of my wife. That every time we watch Rogue One, my wife remembers being at a convention panel with me where people were like, Jen Erso's only okay, and it's like one of the few times I've seen nerd rage pass across my wife's face. It's like, so she is compelling. She does make a big hook. And if you're a person who is ever like, I like Rogue One, I like Jen Erso, but what's really going on there? Man, Rebel Rising, it lays it all out so clearly. The novelization of Rogue One lays it out so clearly. And if you're
Yeah.
not connecting and you want a little bit more, um, perspective, boy, does it just come to life with those novels. I don't think they're necessary, because like I said, my wife always felt this strongly that the character was this great and really felt what she was emoting and what was going on. I think for me, part of the reason I wanted to have the conversation this way is, Force Awakens comes out and it's the sequel and it's Han and Leia's child,
Mhm.
and of course all these characters are going to be the new characters. They're the new three, right? And then the
Yeah.
second film comes out and you're introduced to all these new characters, and it's still new enough to us that we are meeting on screen brand new Star Wars characters that we all memorize their names and try to learn as much about them. But the more Star Wars storytelling that goes on and on and on, are these characters going to still have that same weight that they did when they came out in 2016? And I think for Jen Erso, that's going to be a yes,
Mhm.
partially because of what they've done in Star Wars storytelling in comics and books, where the characters in the galaxy know who she is and know the legacy of who she was and what she did. Chas does. There's great stuff in the Star Wars comics about Luke and knowing about Jen Erso, and respecting what she did. So her legacy is going to live on in the literal storytelling. But for me, in terms of like just what kind of makes her iconic and why I think she will really continue to resonate as a character, is I think she's this perfect picture of an innocent caught up in the conflict.
Mhm.
And you can still have this conversation, with people who are like, yeah, are the Empire really the bad guys? The rebellion did a lot of bad things too, and they could be seen as just an insurgent group attacking the legitimate government. And you can have those fun conversations. I think the perspective of Star Wars is the Empire is bad.
Right.
And Jen is a character who basically just, her story is walking through that argument, right? Of
Yeah.
at different points in her life, she can see, well, yeah, I know the Empire's bad. I know what they did to my family. But every time I get near the rebels, something else is destroyed. And
Yeah.
they're using the same tactics. So what's the deal? It's just, she falls for that cynicism of both sides are the same. In
Mhm.
this movie in particular is her journey to see, no, they aren't, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it, you're so right, because she's, I mean, from the beginning she sees it, and I love the image of Krennic being this man in a white cape that she knows nothing about. He just represents the end of her family, the end of her life as she knew it, and chasing that, and how it goes beyond that, and she doesn't join so she can go take him out. She joins so she can continue her father's mission, because he's, everything is, everything is there. She's seen the destruction firsthand. She knows it. She feels it. And she knows what will happen if she doesn't get involved, and to make that choice, knowing, looking at Saw, who is breathing. He's got his no feet left. He's broken, and he's get everything right or wrong. And I think you can say there's some things he does that should be criticized. I'm talking in story. She knows the cost of this, and that's part of why she probably doesn't want to look up. And then when she finally does it, she knows it. She knows it. She feels it. So that represents so much.
Yeah, and I do think there's gray area. I think there's great discussion about Saw taking things too far. I think there's great discussion of Cassian, really suffering for things like shooting Tivik. Of I did all of this, for a greater good. I need that greater good to happen. I think there are great discussions of those gray areas, and I think Star Wars does ultimately lean toward avoid war at all costs. But I think by her really developing in this film these understanding totally what her father went through, understanding that Cassian is in this place where he can't walk away from this, seeing everything that Saw sacrificed for this, seeing, what the Empire truly does everywhere it goes, and realizing that she needs to make a choice to stand up against the Empire is a really powerful story, and makes her kind of a powerful symbol of the innocent who rejects the they're both the same argument
Mm.
ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah.
So future storytelling is a fun conversation to have in Star Wars always, but particularly when the characters have passed. What kind of future storytelling might you want to see for Jyn Erso?
Going in her past, and Rebel Rising does a couple years, but she's also mentioned with Infus Nest, right? In the solo novelizations, where she's mentioned where Infus Nest goes and takes the hyperfuel to Saw, and that great interaction they have, where that line where Jin says, "Oh, what is she, 11?" in that scene, I think, and he says to Infus, he's Saw's going to overlook you. He's gonna undervalue you, basically, for a lot of reasons. It's great stuff. So I think you could go back and cast a younger Jin, and could you base an entire series around her? I don't know. Maybe you could, probably not. But to have it kind of interwoven with something else, I don't need to be Andor. This is my, give me that Nest series that I think a lot of us would love to have. That's where I'd like to see. Just see a little bit of what you're talking about. A little bit of a young person, young girl trying to establish herself in the galaxy, and her adoptive father, in a way, her father figure, is off launching rocket launchers at kids and trying to fight a war for something big, who lost his sister, lost his family. There's a lot going on there. And it doesn't always have to be dark, I guess, but there's some potential there.
Yeah.
Young Jin out and about.
Yeah, I would be intrigued by something like that. Rebel Rising is such a revelation. I know we talk about it a lot, but I truly do think it is one of the best Star Wars books, because it does deal with some absolutely horrific stuff that Jin has to live through, but it also does deal with the real human side of she meets good people. The you get to see Saw trying to raise her, but Saw just doesn't have anything to give but teach her to be a freedom fighter. He doesn't know anything else, and that's what he has to offer. There's such great humanity in that book that I know fans have sent in questions and I about this, and it's something that I have been really interested in. I'd love to see Disney Plus make some animated films or limited series adaptations of some of the really great novels, and I think or comic book arcs. And I think Rebel Rising is like extremely high on my list, because I just want more people to experience that story of this part of Jin's life. So there's a part of me of the future storytelling I might want to see is just exposing more people to the absolute greatness of Rebel Rising.
Yeah, because again, you can't deny it's just Rogue One benefits from knowing a little more of that stuff. In that moment when she's in front of the vision of her father, that not only did she didn't just think her father died, she thought her father sold out her and her mom and the family, and just said, "Great, I'll go join the Empire." And Lottie Dong, I'm going to go to a nice day at work, and how that burned, and how that felt, and then also to see that my father's alive and he's here for the cause, and that's also what the Empire took from me. It killed my mother, and it robbed me of any relationship I could have had with my father. And it's all there, and that comes out a little bit more in the books too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me say, instead of more, in addition.
In addition, yeah, I mean, it is, it's an extension of the story that's in Rogue One, but because she's, a young woman growing up and growing up under this freedom fighter, it is, a real different part of the story. One of the things I've always appreciated about that book too is that it leaves a window of Jin time, where you get toward the end and then Jin went a bunch of different places, including Takadana. And it almost is just it's I can't even remember, it's 2 paragraphs, but it's like a 2-paragraph backdoor pilot for remember, Jin can still have some adventures, and she does have that a couple of adventures in the Forces of Destiny, and I like what they pull out there, that she is a jaded survivor in these later years when she's separated from Saw. She's just trying to keep her head down and do her own thing, except when a child is in danger, and that's just such a beautiful part of her character. So I would love to see in whatever form, we got a little bit of window to do some more Jyn Erso storytelling, and I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to Cassian Andor. We are going to get some more storytelling with Cassian, so let's just talk about that. What are we hoping for with his character in the Andor television show? And kind of to go along with that, Ken, what do you think his legacy as a character is now? What do you think it's going to be by the time this Andor show catches up with the events of Rogue One?
We've for years now have made the revelation that he had separatist leanings, or his family tied to separatists. It's one of the best things out there at Star Wars that still not everyone knows it, and I'd love to explore a little bit more of that. Because he starts there, and it was a fight he couldn't run away from. Right, he had no choice. 6 years old. So what a powerful starting point. But along the way, and the rebellion grows, everything, and we see him shoot Tivik, and we know, and like you said, he just I've been doing all these things that are maybe questionable for the greater good. You said it so well, Joseph. Just, oh man, I kind of need that greater good to happen. And I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen. But in watching the film this week, for some reason, and he's not in focus. Diego Luna's not in focus. He's over the shoulder of Tivik. And the moment he plays it, when he knows what he's going to have to do, it's even before he walks up to him to say, "Hey, everything's going to be okay." He flashes a look over at Tivik. What Tivik's like, I can't go, and he knows that here it is again. I'm going to have to kill this man, and it's played so well. And it's a beat, it's a second, and I want this series to have him. From I'm in this fight, I have to be. Yep, I have to kill this guy. I have to kill this. I have to take them out. I have to lie to this person. I have to do that, to the point in Rogue One where that kill almost in his head. You're like, I wish I didn't have to do this anymore. And what is that? What's that journey by still keeping the rebellion that you believe in, because you have to. You have no other choice but to believe in, and how that all is weighing down on him, but still drives him forward, and how he hopes for that greater good to finally arrive.
Yeah, I think Diego Luna is just fantastic in the film, and one of the reasons I'm, excited about the Andor television show is he plays that Tivik beat like I have been at this crossroads before, and I know the horrible thing I have to do, and I don't want to do it, but this is not the first time I've wrestled with it, and I don't wrestle with it. I just do it, even though I hate it,
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that suggests so much about what the Andor television show can be. I one of the first things I went to for his legacy, and we'll see, maybe it's a detail in the novelization and the television show won't play with it, but the absolute thrill of the idea that we could see the citizen separatist perspective is what I'm calling it, Ken. We talk about this with the prequel era, with the Clone Wars. We've got great listener questions about the line in the crawl for Revenge of the Sith that says heroes on both sides. And to me, the picture of the Clone Wars is there are separatists, they're true people, citizens who are unhappy with how dysfunctional the Republic has become and want to step away. And that's its great own story. And then that true legitimate concern becomes utterly manipulated by Sidious and Dooku, right? And the vast majority of the separatists that we see are, Grievous and battle droids and, selfish, greedy people, like Wat Tambor and Newt Gunray, who are just in it for money and their own power. And then to be able to see, we get it a little bit, with Mina and Lux Bonteri in the Clone Wars animated series. But the idea that, a character that is going to emerge to be a major Star Wars character, that we get his citizen separatist perspective, what does he know or what does he understand about, hey, I was against the Republic, then the Republic got even worse. Does he understand or care why? Or is it just from his perspective, like he implies in the film, that he's been in this fight since he was 6 years old? From his perspective, the Republic wasn't functioning well. It became a war. People all around him that he cared about died. Great. They changed their name. They ripped the mask off a little bit and just called themselves an empire. And I've been fighting that since I was 6 years old. I so want to dive into that.
So I want to dive in and the mistrust of Jedi or the name Jedi and the concept of the Force. It's on display a little bit in the film, and it's one of those moments that all right, give me I would 2 more minutes of the movie to have him kind of get a little upset with Sharon in some way, or really upset at the Kyber crystal. I don't know to what way. I don't know, and I don't know if it's 100% needed in the film, but it's just one of those little details that I love so much. So now, hey, now we get to explore that a little bit. There might not be Jedi roaming around during this TV series, but there could be more, Guardians of the Will types or Force believers or Force people saying, maybe someone says, man, I wish we had a Jedi. And Cassian says, well, let me tell you about what I think about the Jedi. I'm really intrigued by that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and there's just so much to explore about his background. I wrote down his speech to Jin because I often think of parts of it, and the delivery on "I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old" is so good that's the thing that we often gravitate toward. But if you don't mind, I'm just going to read his full text.
Please.
He says to Jin, Jin is challenging him, that accurately that he had orders to kill her father, which was definitely Draven just leaning into fear. Jin looking at it from a more hopeful perspective of he's got information. Not only is he my father, but he's got information. And Draven looking at it from a point of fear of like he's a risk, kill him. Which great Star Wars themes already. And Jin's questioning him on this, pushing him on this, and he makes it clear like I had orders, but I didn't do them. And then as their argument continues, he says, we don't all have the luxury of deciding where and when we want to care about something. Suddenly, the rebellion is real to you. Some of us live it. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. You're not the only one who lost everything. Some of us just decided to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like that speech is the log line. It's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
blurb. It's the press release for the Andor television show. And there's so much in that makes it unique and powerful. I think that sentence of we don't all have the luxury of deciding where and when we want to care about something, that so speaks to characters like Han and Jin initially, who found a way to be like, yep, the Empire's bad, they're everywhere, but I'm just staying out of it. And him painting this picture that maybe it is that the war came to his planet early on and he lost everything right away and he doesn't have any other life to run to. That's a great, interesting Star Wars story. And I think, for myself, for somebody who likes to enjoy Star Wars as the galaxy far, far away and the fantasy of it, but then also does like to see how it can help me look at the real world in different ways. I think that's just something that's really, really important to remember. Some issues that come up in the real world are issues that some of us have the luxury of deciding whether I want to weigh in on. Other times, those issues are just about somebody, and that person doesn't have a choice of whether or not they want to weigh in on it because it's their life, and somebody is making a decision about their life, And I think there's a power in having a character in Star Wars who expresses that of like, I never had the opportunity to choose whether or not I cared about this war because it came to me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple scenes in Rogue One that I kind of consider like the heart of the movie, but I think this is definitely one of them. It's what it's about. And like I said, spin that off into that series. That's a great starting point.
Yeah. Yeah. And then as I've said before, we'll see how the character develops, even with carrying all those weighty themes, there's a fun and a charm to him. And the fact that he is a spy, that, I think this is going to be a little bit of Star Wars meets kind of a Daniel Craig James Bond, the version of James Bond where there's a cost, an emotional cost to always being in danger and having to take lives, even maybe when you don't want to. And that's just so fresh and new for Star Wars.
I mean, I know you're overall just a big Bond fan, but that's why I was drawn and continue to be drawn back to the Daniel Craig version of Bond is dealing with some of the realistic things. And also the other thing here, you made me think of it too. It's like, not for nothing with Cassian in there, I've always viewed him as just real damn good at his job. And that's why he's at those kind of command tables. He has rank and he has this and that to get into the nuts and bolts of the rebellion. But I also think he's just probably really good at this. And that's another thing that's going to be at play, and what we're going to see him do, and how he chooses to use those skills, and continues to grow and help further the cause. I think it's going to be interesting too.
That's such a great point, and I think another thing that gets him into a little bit of a more realistic espionage. I'm not talking Roger Moore. I don't think he's sipping martinis and making puns. I think that he's good with a blaster. He's a great lockpick. He understands body language and can make himself disappear into a crowd. But if he needs to charm the hell out of somebody, he tells Tivik exactly what Tivik needs to hear. He plays him like a fiddle and then has to shoot him in the back. It's horrible, but it's intriguing to know that that's a part of his character.
Yeah. Though now I wouldn't mind one episode where he has to put on a fancy tunic and go to a fancy bar and Canto Bite and drink.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely want him to go to Canto Bite. Don't get me wrong. In that, I think Casino Royale is probably my favorite Bond film because it mixes that. Like, I have to kind of pretend to be this fancily dressed martini swilling person, but the reality of what I have to do is brutal, and that contrast is really fascinating.
Oh, yeah. I love Casino Royale. Good conversation. Yeah. So Cassian Andor and Canto Bite, now expectations are
All right, let's move on then to K2SO. I think K2SO has been a fan favorite, remains one. Is he for you, Ken?
Yeah, he really is. And he's very funny. Alan Tudyk, props to him for doing it. And can't wait till he joins the Andor story. I got to, in terms of comedy in Star Wars is it's always present, and how people have hot takes on and they should, on how humor in Star Wars is presented. And sometimes it works really well, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes things grow on you, and sometimes we all have some issues with certain jokes or references. But K2 was kind of there from the start. But I've actually grown to appreciate him even more. The line of what is it? Gosh, I should have written it down. But just when Jin has a blaster.
Yeah, I actually rewatched that scene. I didn't have a chance to rewatch the whole movie, but that line is my favorite. Did you know that wasn't me?
There's that. Yes, that. And then, but then the specific one I'm talking about though is when Jin and he's like, "Do you want to know the percentage that she'll use the blaster against you?" No. Well, that it's high. It's very high. It's so great, and it's so real. And yes, there's a lot of wisecracking droids in Star Wars. We totally get that, and sometimes I think our antenna goes up. You and I both have that, like, here we go. And L3 exceeded my expectations after initially me going up. Another droid. Chopper too. I had some Chopper issues. Now I love that curmudgeonly, selfish, but also self-sacrificing hero. K2. I still love them, and they represent a lot of that, and the big theme I've talked about before, but choice over programming.
Yeah, I think I really like K2 because a snarky droid can be kind of a straightforward joke, and different droids who have weird programming. It's kind of all over Star Wars, from the books and the comics. There's something about K2 that I think he has those moments that are a little bit more go to the core of his identity, like that. Did you know that wasn't me? Sounds honestly hurt, and it invites you to, it's a funny line, but then it also invites you to think about this weird identity he has where he was programmed to be something else, but then he clearly has developed a true bond with Cassian. And, I love the description. I didn't write down the exact dialogue, but that when Cassian reprogrammed him, he now can't stop saying what he's thinking.
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't deal with it directly, but it invites you to think, like, does he care about that? Is he uncomfortable with that? Right. Is there a part of it? Are there some servos spinning trying to make him stop himself from saying everything that he thinks? That's some really great stuff that, right now it sounds like he's not appearing in the first season of Andor. But if he appeared in future seasons, I would love, there's a little bit of depth there to explore. Do you want him to show up in future seasons?
I totally do, and I know we got what I would call soft confirmation now of not even necessarily season 2, but just some point in the story is what Alan Tudyk said. No, I really do. And look, there's the one shot comic of where they met, and it's good, it's fine, it's okay. I'm okay with them revisiting that moment. I'm not saying totally retcon it and changing everything, because then, the countless amount of YouTube videos that would now pop up in my recommended file would be annoying, but revisit it and seeing it in live action. Or maybe you just do it after they've met. I don't know, but to see this, I'd love to spend more time with this droid that was, again, programmed to be an Imperial, and programmed to think and say certain things or restrict certain thoughts, and now he doesn't have to. That's pretty big. That's a pretty big theme. And don't forget, this is the one character who just out and out says, "I'm with you because Cassian says I have to," and then K2's the first one to sacrifice himself. The first one to make the choice, what I always refer to as choice over programming. Programming being everything he came from, everything he was, and everything he believed, which was, forced to be here, to being, I'll die for you to carry on. It's still one of the more affecting deaths in the movie for me, and the light slowly fading out on K2's eyes. It hit me then, because initially, like I said up top, like, oh no, our character's going to die. Oh, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. They're going to do it. And now when I watch it, it just means a lot. It represents a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and I know we've talked about it before, but I love that there's this bond between him and Cassian, and you get the sense he would have sacrificed himself for Cassian. At least I do.
Mm-hmm.
But that great blaster connection between him and Jin, of Jin showing him that trust that he didn't show her.
Yeah,
and realizing, oh wow, and he's got that line about you, very unusual, or paraphrasing that one. And that's just, it's a sweet moment that in this movie about war, where people feel programmed to fight on this side, programmed to fight on that side, that these two characters can bond over the trust that's represented by a blaster.
Yeah, there you go.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So we're going to move on to Bodhi Rook. You said some very eloquent things in the first half of the podcast about Bodhi, which kind of what I wanted to frame in this question, which I think I've heard your answer already. Is Bodhi the ultimate sort of every person, regular citizen in Star Wars that we've seen on screen so far?
Yeah, ultimate. Yeah, I mean, in a way, because it's highlighted so well in this picture, and then the whole movie. He's got that Imperial insignia on his shoulder, and you mentioned it. I think going back, I'll cite Clerks. Kevin Smith's Clerks is the first time he had those, like, the rebels blew up the Death Star, but there was probably some contractors just doing their job on there. I've had those conversations for 30 years, 40 years too, right? And some of them are just totally fun, and I don't take them beyond that. And it's part of the fun of being a Star Wars fan. I'll have a contractor on the Death Star conversation any day of the week. But this was framed as, he's an Imperial, but it was a job, and he's from Jeddah. That's his home planet, and that was his way off, and it was a job and a way to provide for his family. He's got a family, and he is faced with the truth of what he's involved with. And you can have a lot of those. The stormtroopers were on the Death Star, and they didn't know Alderaan was blown up, and they're real people, real creatures, and their loss was felt by other people in the Empire. And Alphabet Squadrons does a pretty good job of dealing with that in a very realistic way, with some of the losses on the Empire, some of the funerals they have. And you can look at it in that way. But when faced with the truth, he chooses. And that's why I think it's so important, that line of to make things right. That's the theme. And of this jittery, I'm just a truck driver. Now I have to save the galaxy, and it's all dependent on me. And the joy when he does it, when he gets that thing plugged in. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Francis McGee, who's Yoren from Game of Thrones, dies saving him, and the other characters die as he plugs in. And that there's so much peace in the moment. He feels as though he has made things right. And that's his last thought. And he knows it, and he can't turn away from it. And he's already made the choice. And it is the every person stepping up in a way that's, it's just so important and immeasurable to the Star Wars story, because the rebellion doesn't happen. This is why you and I love Enfys Nest and love what Solo does. And you pointed out so well back in the day, just that hyperfuel does. It's not a MacGuffin. It's not just a MacGuffin. It is representing so much. And Enfys Nest says that. That's why I say Enfys Nest is the face of the new face of the rebellion, because it comes from these affected worlds. And Bodhi Rook was maybe not in that affected world, but he realized he was now shipping the machinery of the war of the monster that was oppressing those worlds. He wants to make it right, and it all ties together. and it spins into militaristic action that this movie is, and which is what the rebellion it has to become. It all flows so well, and he is on the ground level of that, and that's why I really do love this character. And plus, Riz Ahmed, come on, the guy's great.
Yeah, and I mean, I think script wise, on the page, Bodhi doesn't have as much to work with as some of the other characters, and Riz Ahmed makes every syllable sing and worth it, and the character comes across so likable and relatable and tragic in all the best ways. Yeah, I think for me, I kind of go to, we had a really fun conversation several main shows back about factions in Star Wars, because that's kind of the way I grew up with it in my mind of like, there are Jedi, there are rebels, there are bounty hunters, but almost you saw a couple people like Wuhair, they're bartenders, but I didn't have a lineup of here are the 7 bartenders and here are the blasters they come with, right? I kind of grew up with everyone in Star Wars is someone, exotic and fun and strange, and that's a great way to look at Star Wars. But Bodhi's this character who's just like, I can feel Bodhi Rook saying, why would there ever be an action figure of me? I don't have a lightsaber, I'm not a smuggler, I'm not a bounty hunter, I don't fight in an underground ring of gladiators. Like he's I'm not a politician. He's a person with a relatable real world job, even compared to the other characters he's around. He's not a guardian of the will. He's not, a master spy. He's not a trained resistance fighter like Jin. He's just got a pretty relatable job. And in real world terms, he makes this incredibly terrifying choice to be a whistleblower against a massive organization who's going to do something horrific, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that those kind of characters can and should be in Star Wars and given a spotlight, I think there are many representatives of that now as the storytelling expands, and there's going to be more. But I think Bodhi was, for me, really one of the first and really moving because of that sort of baton of hope way that I process Rogue One, that he is the first link in this chain, not the first, I guess the second. If you start with Galen saying, I built this flaw in, but it's going to be useless unless anybody knows about it, and I need to get it out, and I'm riding back and forth with this person, and I can see in their eyes that they know what's going on around them, and I'm gonna take this I'm gonna give this opportunity, and I'm gonna ask this person to take this terrifying risk, and to look at somebody like Bodhi Rook, like he's got a job for the legitimate government. That in the legitimate government is evil because it's run by an evil space wizard at the end of the day. And none of the Star Wars we know happens unless he is just mind-blowingly brave.
Mind-blowingly brave. You said whistleblower. That's a great way to say it. And how, the journey, he gets on that path, and I would love to, and I'm trying to remember the Rogue One novel, if it goes, it definitely has more details on him and Galen, but I just would love to, probably because Riz Ahmed's such a great performer, and so is Mads Mikkelsen as well, but just, that conversation that finally, I can't imagine it happened in one sitting. I can't imagine every time he went to Edu to pick something up, or Galen was like, hey, buddy, Bodhi, how you doing? Come over here. I got something for you. Like what's the moment where Bodhi says, yeah, I need to make this right for my family that I'm working for what I'm doing to other, like, I would love the moment, and how he thinks it's simple enough, right? The movie starts with him going, hey, I'm the defector. I'm the guy. I got the information. Are you Saw Gerrera? Because I need to get this information. And now they're just like, nope, not today. Like, I got to imagine he walked up to Moroff and Jeddah. Hey, can you get me Saw? Because I'm supposed to talk to Saw. And he thinks it's so simple, and which is why I love the choice, because there's that clip. I think Riz Ahmed put it out there. Just he auditioned several different variations of the character. Right? There's more of a smooth talker. There's smooth, and he ends up going with this. Not. I don't think he's necessarily a stutterer, but it's the end. I keep saying that only because he's got that energy.
He's terrified. He's playing terrified. The terror.
Yeah, exactly. You saw, oh my God. And then he's so upset, but I'm the pilot, right? I did what's right. And his journey isn't just that one step. It's a complete thing. And that's why it's continues to just reward me when I watch it. I really love what's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so given that we both feel that we love Bodhi for this perspective of in every person who takes on this huge challenge, do you want more Bodhi stories, or is Rogue One his story, or do you want the my flights with Galen, where you get to see that conversation, that slow building of trust?
I would love a Disney Plus series, My Flights with Galen, 3-part limited series. Would love that. I will say, as much as I love this character, and much as I love having Riz Ahmed in Star Wars, this might be it for me in terms of Bodhi Rook. I think it's pretty complete for me. It's pretty. It's bittersweet. It's tragic, but it's also triumphant at the same time. So I think that's kind of it. But don't want more Bodhi Rook like stories in Star Wars? Yeah, give me a little bit more of that in a new way. Could you find a way to work them in? Could you find a spot in even the Andor series that isn't super cute or quaint of, oh, there's Bodhi Rook, but and they've interacted or something like that before, like, could you find a way to have an episode where it's just the dude that shows up to do his job for the Empire and slowly starts to realize what he's doing? Maybe you could. A more talented storyteller than me could take that on. But I will say I'm really satisfied with Rogue One as a standalone Bodhi Rook story.
Yeah, I think I can find little moments that would be fun to explore. The My Flights with Galen, and joking about the title, but not about the content in some form, because
Yep.
that's a really fascinating relationship. But I think a part of the what is so great about Bodhi is this is the adventure he went on. Because before this, he's not a smuggler, he's not a Jedi,
Right.
he's not a warrior. He is a pilot doing a kind of day to day job, and
Yeah.
this is the adventure he chose to go on, is
Mhm.
what gives him his power. I think if there's anything else, uh, we'll see how books exist 40 years after Rogue One, but if they do, Rogue One from a certain point of view, and
Mm.
what would that be? 2056, 40 years out.
Yeah.
If we're still doing the podcast in
We will.
2056,
Okay.
I would love Bodhi's perspective on the Borg Gullet experience. I know it's
Yeah.
in the novelization,
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe I need to revisit that a little bit, but that would be engaging to me.
Yeah. 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 He gone don't get messed up.
Yeah, maybe I'll just have to pull that novelization down and just re-experience the Borg Gullet from
Yeah.
Bodhi's perspective.
Re-experience the Borg Gullet for the first time.
Yeah, coming soon to Galaxy's Edge, the Borg Gullet.
Hmm.
Moving on then. Obviously, they are their own characters, but they're also a duo, so I wanted to discuss them together. Of course, we have Chirrut Emwe and Baze Malbus. Ken, what to you makes these characters special? Do you celebrate them as individuals, a duo, both? Where do you go?
I definitely, celebrate them as individual, but yeah, come on, they're a team. They're a team for a reason, and I do love them, and I do. I mean, there's such a just a childhood thrill of hearing the Guardians of the Wills on screen in Star Wars. I've told the story before, but getting the Star Wars novelization and seeing the prologue has, Palpatine and everything, and it says taken from the Journal of the Wills. I'm not lying. I'd go around, make my mom and dad anytime we use bookstore in Arroyo Grande or Grover Beach, San Luis Obispo, my hometown. I'd go and I'd spend as long as they would let me looking for this phantom Star Wars book I thought existed. Because it was there in the print. It's mom, it says it's taken from the Journal of the Wills. Have you ever heard of the Journal of the Wills? What Star Wars book is that? I don't know. Ken. I don't know, Ken. I don't know, Ken. So to 40 years later, to see this on screen, to hear it on screen, and to see it's them, and to get to know them, and I loved it. And what they represent, it is a little bit of the actual on the ground, the spirit of the Force and the spirit of the Jedi being snuffed out, and they're the last of their kind in some sort of way, at least in terms of the story. And what are they guarding? They're guarding a memory. They're guarding whispers and legends and rumors, and they're guarding something that's not at play right now in the eyes of a lot of people. That means a lot, and how their story ties up, and then just Baze being once a believer, not a believer, and finding at the end, share it being so great and insightful, and Woody, this blind character that is just sees beyond anything. It's great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they're both great charming actors like everybody in this. There is the fact that they are, you know, cool fighters. They have cool weapons and they have cool action moments, and that is definitely a big part of what makes them
Mm,
powerful and cool. I
right.
think that the fact that they're a duo, they're both the Guardians of the Wills, which, by the way, I totally relate. I looked for the journal and I looked for whatever other further adventures of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
That was a totally believable thing back in the day when
mm,
if you found an old fantasy book and it said there are more adventures,
yeah,
you could usually find them
yeah,
in some dusty old used bookstore. Not so much with the further adventures of Luke Skywalker is taken from the journey Journal of the Wills. Um, but yeah, I think that they are great to advance, just like Bodhi and Cassian and Jin all show us a little bit more on the ground perspective of people who've lived through the war
mm,
of Clone Wars and the Cold War between the Empire and the Rebellion, as the Empire puts its boot on the galaxy's neck. Chirrut and Baze represent, for me, that line in A New Hope where Tarkin calls the Force a religion, and
yeah,
says the Jedi's fire has gone out of the galaxy. You're the last of that. Um, that this idea that Chirrut Emwe can be somebody who is very lightly Force sensitive, or
yeah,
is maybe just a really great fighter. And he's got his echo box that is described in a couple of the written materials.
right.
Um, but ultimately what they are is they're people who used to defend, the legacy of not just the Jedi, but the Force and the Kyber crystals. They elevate the Kyber crystals to something that is truly being perverted by the Empire. Like, there's a lot of that in the Catalyst novel, but even just watching the film and knowing that, the Kyber crystals are what power the Death Star, and those were sacred to somebody, so much so that they had literal defenders, right?
Hmm.
um they really help elevate that story of the Kyber crystals, but more than anything, they're this great action
Mm,
comedy tragedy duo of Chirrut, somebody who, regardless of the horrors, is just clearly never going to lose their faith. And
right.
Baze is somebody who has, like, yeah, no, I totally lost my faith in the idea and in the
Hmm.
religion, but I still believe in my friend.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm going to follow him around and keep him alive. Like, what a great picture of the Force as religion.
Yeah, which following Force Awakens and Lore Santeca and the Church of the Force, which was one of the first times I'd really concentrate on that. But you're so right to bring in the Tarkin line from New Hope. It's always what was present. So to finally get to explore that, it's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So there is some other storytelling. There's the book by Greg Rucka called Guardian of the Wills, and I read that, and there's definitely some fun stuff in it, and it gives a little bit more background. There's definitely some, they are coming to terms with what's happening on Jeddah, and how much they want to get involved or not, and we learn how Baze gets his blaster. So there's some just fun setup stuff. So there is that book. But do you want more tales of Chirrut and Baze in particular?
Yeah, I would, and only to have these make use of these great characters because I think unlike where I think Bodhi, it's there, it's present, and like you said, a Bodhi Rook story from 5 years prior would be him doing a couple shifts delivering things. I don't know what you could do here. These characters, whether it's on Jeddah or not, or their early days, or coming out of the Clone War, I don't know. There's potential there with the characters in terms of the performers. Wen Jiang and Donnie Yen. Like, I mean, these are legends in their own right, and to have them in Star Wars, we're pretty fortunate for that. So if there was a way you could, you know, uh, bring a story that's a year or two prior to Rogue One and have it kind of work on screen, I'd be all there for that. Only because I still think these are two of the characters that do get overlooked in conversations about this movie. Not necessarily for us here at Force Center or others around, but I don't see their names being brought up enough anymore, and they're two really unique characters that tie also to the heart of Star Wars and the heart of the past of Star Wars, growing up with the Wills and whatnot. So yeah, I could get behind the idea.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's some of the great depth of Rogue One, but they're also
Mhm.
just some of the great aesthetic of Rogue One. Chirrut's outfit might be one of my favorite outfits,
It's really
and
good.
and to bring in different aesthetics, to have Baze be like, "I'm the guy who's lost my faith, but I have the largest blaster I can find." It's just,
Yeah, yeah.
some great Star Wars aesthetic as well. And I think for me, the idea of them is Guardians of the Wills. The one line that Baze used to be the most devout. I'm paraphrasing because I did not look that one
Sure.
up, but that one line from Chirrut about Baze used to be the most devout of all of us, but he's lost
Right.
his faith. I think they are the characters and the idea of the Guardians of the Wills that obviously I like them because I'm going on about it. But I think they might be one of the examples of I would have liked to see more of the iceberg
Yeah.
of the idea of who they are and what their life was like. Just a little bit more hint of
Mm.
what was it like when things were going well at
Yeah.
in Jeddah for them, and when there is a purity to their role, and they felt like we are where we need to be. We are defending and honoring, the temple.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Guardians of the Wills, the new Disney Plus series.
There we go. There we go. Oh, so Ken, that is the main characters. But
Yeah.
wait, it's not
Oh.
just the main Rogue One team who died. It's almost everyone we met.
Yeah.
We got Saw Gerrera, pretty confirmed dead. Admiral Raddus, presumed. I'm not going to commit to it. Orson Krennic,
Yeah.
Galen and Urso and Lyra Urso, pretty clear. Bistan,
Oh.
wonderful space monkey, presumed dead. I got some headcanon. I think you do too. Borgullet, presumed dead. Many, many rebel pilots and soldiers. You could list many other characters, but those are some of the other, they're not the main Rogue One team, but it is really amazing to think almost all of these characters did not make it out of this first standalone film. So,
Mm.
Ken, out of all these characters, which ones do you think are going to live on as major Star Wars characters, and who do you want to live on? Who do you want to see more of?
I'll tell you what, I think the appreciation for Saw Gerrera should, I hope, continue to get bigger and better. Clone War fans were so excited. It's a great example. It's often cited as, hey, you have a character. We have a character that fits that role. Once you tap into Saw Gerrera and George, this was kind of a George sponsored character. Like, he really liked what Saw represented it. And then I go to Forrest Whitaker, who, I've just always been a fan of. He's, old time filmy fans like us know him, and to have him in Star Wars. And yeah, it's tiny, it's weird, but I love every weird choice he made. I love everything about it. I love him swallowing some of his words. He's got a lot going on, and his voice is and the way he just speaks, and the way he moves, the way he breathes, and he more and more. You go to the Clone War episodes, go to the stuff in Rebels where Forrest Whitaker's like, hell yes, I'm coming back. The voice of the character, I really love this, and it is the video Fallen Order.
Mhm.
Great stuff in Fallen Order, and there's already some stuff that people like questioning what he's doing. He represents a lot of great, wonderful discussion around the rebellion. The feud between him and Mothma is wrestling level. It could be a main event of WrestleMania. Just the philosophy of how to rebel. It's important, and again, just last view, and it really just he represents. You could say even like the Vader of it all, right? He's
Absolutely.
a lot of machines. He's having trouble breathing. He's in kind of an armor. There's a lot of that there too, and some parallels, like you said, on
There
purpose.
isn't much of me left. Yeah.
Yeah, there's much, but again, just to know that all of our characters are like being all of our characters, other than Cassian, but even Cassian's, killing Tivik, and it's like you're sacrificing, you're giving up a piece of yourself, and here's this poster child for it, and then we see this powerful moment. I love the moment where he's like, "No, I'm not going with you. Save the rebellion, save the dream." And I've had people, remember, especially back in the day, this, well, why didn't he go? Why didn't he go? Yeah, no, he could have gone, but he'd given up so much of himself. There was none left. It was no longer, he could not go on. And that's part of it. That's part of the loss. And that's what all these characters have in the back of their head. I'm joining this fight And am I going to give up my ability to breathe on my own, my ability to walk on my own? Am I going to give up my own life? Am I going to continue to give up my family like he did with his sister? There's so much there that he represents. I think he's a real powerful character that can be overlooked because you could stop on what was up with his hair or his voice. And, and again, Forrest Whitaker made I thought some wonderful choices of a broken leader, a broken hero, a broken fighter, and what that really means for all of our characters.
Yeah, I think that there's a reason that Saw Gerrera, lives outside of just Rogue One. That's obviously his big screen presence. Obviously introduced in the Clone Wars animated series, and as you said, appears in Rebels, appears in Fallen Order, appears in a bunch of books and comics, and he's gonna probably appear in more because he represents what Cassian is wrestling with. Cassian's wrestling with I have made lots of individual horrific choices for the greater good, and Saw is this picture of in the greater good is so important, it's worth anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, you talk about the gray area, and I talk really in complimentary ways about that idea of, let's not be Nora Jabel, and when something truly is awful is happened, let's take action. But then Saw is this great moral balance of, what happens when you decide you must act, but you don't you don't worry as much about the individual actions, which he seems to just justify. And I love that it's the Vader comparison with the literal loss of body parts and clearly some loss of emotional health. But the story that's going on there is that he believes his life as a warrior has led him to this place where he's extinguished the reasons to fight. He's nothing but fear and paranoia. Right. And that's what's so powerful about it is it's not just his bold, weird choices that I really like, as an actor, to show that. It's the fact that that's what's happening in the plot. The reason this is not going smoothly for Bodhi or Cassian or anybody else is because he has sort of become what he's fighting. He's just motivated by fear and paranoia, And I think what's so powerful about him stopping is, to me, it goes back to that baton of hope. It's maybe the practical thing of maybe he's not going to make it to the ship if he runs with Jyn. But far, far more important to me is this utter fear, this loss of humanity, this paranoia that he's been living with. I think some of that gets lifted from him when Jyn sees the message and he sees that spark of hope reignite in her, and I think that's the power of, save the rebellion, save the dream. He trusts that he's passed on that baton to Jyn, in that he's done what he needs to do.
Totally. He represents so much to me. I mean, can you imagine you're sitting in a room with this guy and he's like, "You don't believe in the cause?" And I'd be like, "No, look what it's done to you."
Yeah, it doesn't look like a great cause. Yeah. So many great perspectives on that. So Saw definitely there for me. You and I have both talked a lot about, I love what Krennic represents is just the middle manager who is, just really wants his glory within the structure, and just kind of like, well, what are you going to do? It's the world, it's the government, that's the way we do things, and you can either benefit by it or not. And I'm gonna get my social standing, and I'm gonna eat at the nicest places and sit at the important table at Imperial meetings. That energy is so powerful, so great. A dark side version of bringing it to the real world. The utter power of Radis being the character who has the spirit to contrast Nora Jabal and say, nope, let's fight. They went, well, I'm going too. Here we go. Absolutely great. But for me, I think out of all these characters, who I'd want to see more of is Lyra Urso. I think she's the one who has the actual most storytelling potential, and not most, I should say, because a lot of these characters are explored and they'll be explored other places. They're great Krennic stories to tell. So I take back the most. The teases that we get in Catalyst, more than teases, of her as this really adventurous person who is force aware, that she can kind of feel shifts in energy, and she knows and believes that that's the force, but she can't touch it. She can't manipulate it. It doesn't obey her commands. But just that little bit of I'm force aware, and it's partially because my whole life is about finding and respecting the kyber crystals. That's some great
Mhm.
storytelling, right? That could happen of,
Mhm.
somebody who is out of the greatest respect searching for kyber.
Yeah, I tell you, Lyra, you know, I was I love the cold open of Rogue One. I really do. And though I lament the loss of another mother character in Star Wars or just popular storytelling. We've talked about a lot. Jen Landa has talked about that in a wonderful way before as well. But I still love that opening. I still love what it represents to that story. So I love that Catalyst exists. Catalyst, Galen and Lyra is one of the best, just kind of real world look at relationships in Star Wars. It's so good, worth a revisit. But yeah, a little bit more. Young Lyra on the hunt for crystals, and there's some real potential there too.
Yeah. And when I say more storytelling, I don't need everything to be a Disney Plus show. I'd be happy with that being a Disney
Correct.
Plus show, but there's just so many different possibilities for storytelling. Give me the Lyra Urso video game. And she's out there collecting Kyber and running into trouble.
Yeah, like the Star Wars, like truly a Star Wars Tomb Raider esque game, but even better and more. Yeah, with Lyra, I love that.
Yeah, instead of Tomb Raider, it can be Kyber Respecter. That'll sell.
There you go.
Any other thoughts on all of those other characters who we met?
Yeah.
Well, Saw we didn't meet, but those characters of Rogue One who also did not make it out of the film. Any other thoughts you want to share?
You love General Merrick, and there's a lot of great characters there. I've said so much on Radis over the years, but I one of the things that I really picked up on this, focused on this last viewing this weekend was, when the techs yelling, oh, God, Mon, and well, let me speak to Admiral Radis. He's gone. The look on Genevieve O'Reilly's face as Mon Mothma, that smile, and that yeah, of course Radis left, and of course we needed him too, and God bless it, we're in a war, and let's go do this. Like, it's a great little moment, and speaks to why I just love Radis and a lot of the stuff around him.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that the legacy of Star Wars can be seen more storytelling of characters after they pass. Legacy can be fans like us getting real excited by somebody like Radis, and then sometimes legacy can be in the storytelling. Right, that right away that next movie, the ship is named Radis in Last Jedi, and that the characters in the galaxy love Radis as much as we do. Is nice to know. Final question, Ken.
Mhm.
Do you ever want a Rogue 2 where we follow the Bothans who died to get the information about the second Death Star?
Yes, and only to just finally get it out of the way and maybe end the jokes and memes and all those things, especially the old ones, and answer the question where now it's deliciously vague on, are the Bothans a species or the Bothans a group? I don't know. There's been some. Remember Matt Martin tweeted something out where they maybe don't assume that there. So I could see it there. I know it might cause some eye rolls, but I don't care. That's what I'm here for as a Star Wars fan. Just give me the stories I want.
Yeah, no, I think it's been fun over the years in this era of Star Wars storytelling. For I think different writers have shared like, yeah, I want to do something with the Bothans, and like, no, let's hold off. It makes me feel like someday there is a plan for the Bothans,
Yeah.
and I think it's fun to joke about Rogue 2. It's fun to joke about the Bothans, but I think maybe a reason that does keep coming up and people want to answer that is because that line in Return of the Jedi and the way it is delivered has such great weight and punch of many Bothans died to bring us this information. But that sentence, that's a great summary of Rogue One. This isn't literally the story of the Bothans, but this is the story of those people who came before and did really hard things and made a sacrifice so this next step can happen.
Totally. It's worth exploring.
Absolutely worth exploring. Ken, do you have any other final wrap up questions on our look back at the bravery of Rogue One?
No, once again, we always start an episode going, "Hey, we might get through this one kind of quick," and then I just kind of knew. I remember you pitched this topic, and I said that's great, and I had back in my head, I was like, I don't need to watch Rogue One again. I've seen it enough. I can have this conversation. Getting to do it, I just was moved beyond belief, beyond my own expectations on a Sunday afternoon following my taxes. Yeah, just love this film and love that it's not just stood the test of time; it's perhaps growing under the test of time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I was the one who was like, yeah, no, I mean, I wrote up the questions and I took some out to make sure this, this will be 90 minutes. So in the spirit of brevity, the final thing for me to say is I think one of the great things about Rogue One is I'm a big believer in the idea of things being more than the sum of their parts, or to
Mhm.
mix metaphors. Sometimes you're playing all the notes, but there isn't music. I really believe that when something really works, all the parts come together and become something more than themselves. So I think that for me, that's why I can go like, yeah, Borg Gullet is kind of a Chekhov's gun and make a joke about it, or nitpick about, how I would have wanted maybe a little bit more in this scene or that scene. But ultimately, those things don't matter because Rogue One is so much more than the sum of its parts. It the individual ideas that we talked about all add up to this thing that has this just great weight and power and thrill and charm, and that's ultimately what I want to celebrate about Rogue One. A lot of brave choices led to something that is really powerful and much more than the sum of its parts, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
All right, you want to tell people where they can find us, Ken?
I would love to. You can follow us on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. We're on Instagram, YouTube as well. Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. You can listen to us on Anchor or iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, TuneIn, Amazon Music, or Spotify. Don't forget Spotify if you're a user over there. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. We got our own fights in the galaxy going on. You can follow mine at KenNapsuck or KenNapsuck.com. For you, Joseph?
Yeah, you can follow me Twitter and Instagram at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for all of my other comedy adventures. And sometimes we highlight things. I'll highlight again a thing that I've mentioned in the past. There's a service called ResistBot. It is a very quick text-based service where you can send a very quick, easy message to your reps and let them know what you care about. You can be the opposite of Noah Jabel with ResistBot, and I think that's great. That is our episode, a big look back at Rogue One. So for now, for myself, for Ken, for the Borg Gullet, this has been ForceCenter.